This is Your Anxiety Toolkit, episode number 121. Welcome to Your Anxiety Toolkit. I'm your host, Kimberly Quinlan. This podcast is fueled by three main goals. The first goal is to provide you with some extra tools to help you manage your anxiety. Second goal, to inspire you. Anxiety doesn't get to decide how you live your life. And number three, and I leave the best for last, is to provide you with one big, fat virtual hug. Because experiencing anxiety ain't easy. If that sounds good to you, let's go. Welcome back, dear friends. I'm so happy to have you with me again. I really do value you and the time you take to be here with me. I just love it. So thank you. Really, it means so much to me. Well, I am concluding here the end of another ERP school launch. We had an amazing show of amazing human beings who were really brave and put up their hand and said, I'm going to do the hard thing. And it was really, really cool, I have to say. So for everyone here who is new and who signed up for ERP school, welcome. Congratulations. Keep going. I'm proud of you. And I really, really hope that you're just going to soar. And for those of you who didn't get to sign up, and that's totally okay too, I hope the same for you. I hope that I can inspire you to every day know your capability and your absolute power to do the scary, hard thing because you have it in you. Maybe you don't know yet, but I know. I know it's there. Maybe you don't know, but it's definitely there. And I really, really love hearing all of the hard things that you guys are doing, right? It's just wonderful. It's wonderful. Really, really, it is. This week, instead of doing I did a hard thing, I'm actually doing a listener question. I had a question. Somebody had asked me this a few months ago. And as soon as I read it, I was really, shocked with how profound the question was, number one. And it really hit me and made me think that I bet a bunch of you would benefit by me not just responding to this person privately, but to talk about it in the open. So today's episode is all about listener question. Here we go. So this person wrote, I work hard to implement mindfulness in my life, and in many ways it makes sense and it helps me. But sometimes I feel like I escape when I try to live in the present moment. It's like my OCD tells me, in quotes, wow, you've learned a new tool. Great. But do you know what? If something is contaminated or dangerous, it doesn't matter if you try to live in the present moment. You are just kidding yourself. You have to take care of the problems from yesterday, and you have to make sure that you have a future to live in. Don't be fooled by all of that mindfulness stuff, unquote. My mind gets twisted. Do you have any thoughts that can bring some clarity? Okay. I know what you guys are thinking. You're thinking, yep. Whether you have OCD or anxiety or depression or an eating disorder or a BFRB, or even if you don't, I'm sure you've attempted mindfulness and were walloped or, slapped in the face with this kind of response from the brain. So I'm going to break it down a little bit. The first thing they said is, sometimes I feel like I escape when I try to live in the present moment. Well, for me, that's a really interesting thing to say because I actually think there's some truth to that. When we are in the present moment, we aren't focusing on the future or the past. And when we aren't focusing on the future and the past, there is an escape to that. There is a joy and unlocking to that, right? There's a letting go to that. And so I totally agree that it might feel a little bit like an escape, but I don't particularly think that's a bad thing. I really don't. I think that when we can connect to the present, and what I mean by that is stepping down out of our brain and our mind into what's actually happening. What do you see? What do you smell? What do you feel? What's happening? Is it the wind blowing? Is a person talking to you? What's going on around you? And in that moment, that's when, for me, I have this visual of like the curtains kind of come back and you're kind of home, right? It's scary sometimes, but it's the most truth you can find is when you're actually just in the present, because it's the only truth we can really have. They go on to say, it's like my OCD tells me, great, you've learned a new tool, but, and here's where I want to really highlight. I love when fear, I'm not going to call it OCD, I'm going to call it fear because that's what it is. I love when fear gives us a big, fat but, right? And the reason I love it isn't because it's comfortable or I want you to feel that way, not at all. The reason I love it is right there is where we start to intervene, right there at the butt. I'm not talking about the B-U-T-T. I'm talking about the B-U-T. Sorry, my immature brain just started giggling. I have young children, so potty words have become a little bit of a hilarious thing to me lately. You have to forgive me. Okay, so I digressed. I'm going to come on back, bring it back to the present. Sorry. Okay, right there at the butt is where we intervene, right? That is where our mind tries to get us to engage in what was old patterns. That's just old patterns. It tries to say, yeah, present moment, cool, but let's go forward. Let's focus on the front. Let's focus on what's going to happen soon. Or it'll go, yeah, present moment, let's go on back to the past, right? And in that practice, that's where we strengthen the muscle of either anxiety, if you're trying to worry about the future, or often depression and sadness and guilt and shame if we're focusing on the past, right? So we can kind of make that general statement. Future, always going to be about anxiety. Past is often going to be about depression, shame, guilt, and so forth, right? And so if we're exercising this muscle around focusing on the future, we're exercising our anxious brain muscle. If we're focusing on the past, we're exercising that muscle that often brings up hopelessness and helplessness and worthlessness and self-doubt and shame, all of those really, really thick, gray experiences and emotions, right? So that but is the point in which we intervene, right? Think of it like just a little alarm. If you hear that but word, that's your time to intervene. So let's keep going. Okay, so here they've talked about how, fear, it sounds like, showed up in this case. And it says, if something happens, there's another little, flag to think about. If your thoughts start with what if, it's usually talking about the future, right? What if this and what if that? It's talking about things that could maybe happen, right? But they're not actually happening, right? And so my suggestion is if you have a but thought, right? Now you guys are giggling. If you have a but thought, then we come back to just going, okay, maybe, but I'm not tending to that, right? You can see here what it's also done is it said, but if this and this, and then it goes on to say, you're just kidding yourself. You have to take care of problems. You have to make sure. You have to find safety, right? Think of that as basically like bringing in all the bullies, bringing in all the big guns, And this is, again, why I've always said to you, don't get mad at fear. It's doing its job. Its job is to scan for danger. Its job is to say, but this, but that, but this, what if that, think about this, don't forget this. Its job is to list those off to you. Your job, my job, our job is to note those as, okay, thank you. We're going to note them as possible, but we're going to ultimately thank them. Thank you for showing up and telling me of all the possible dangers, right? And thank you for alarming me to when my brain wants to go off into the future to solve future problems that have never, that aren't happening right now. Right? So to talk specifically to this question, it makes total sense that your mind is getting, feeling twisted, to use your specific word. It makes total sense that this is overwhelming. And a part of this is really being intentional about which muscle am I going to exercise. Am I going to exercise the anxious muscle, where I focus on the future and what possible dangers and all the uncertainties in our life? Am I going to focus on more of the hopeless, sad, bad things that have happened in the past? And am I going to allow myself to strengthen that muscle? Or am I going to strengthen the muscle of being here in the present? Just noticing, just being aware of what is true and real in this moment, right? Because that's the only real certainty we will have, what's really happening right now. Okay, so something to think about here is I get that this is scary and uncertain. You may remember back to the episode I did with Reed Wilson. If you haven't listened to it, please do go back. But what he ultimately talks about is this is all just content. After that but, it's all just content. It's saying, this and this and this could happen, this and this and this could happen, but tomorrow it's going to give you another scenario because there's one different thing involved. And then it's going to fill you up with content. And if we can be savvy to that content, if we can catch that this is fear's way of getting us tangled up in the content, if we can recognize that, we can step back and go back into the present without engaging in the many ways in which fear can scare us, right? Again, like we said, its job is to list off the 100 things that could go wrong. Our job is to stay out of that content, right? It's hard. I'm not going to lie. This is hard work. But we have to see the trend. If we looked back, we could see how many days or hours or minutes have we spent on simply content. Thoughts and buts and what ifs that never came true, right? And if we can look at it that way and see that when we engage in the content, that is when we start to lose a grip on our lives. We start to lose a grip on living the life that we want, right? Content often leads us away, this very fast way, away from living the life that we want. And that's why I'm saying to you, we have to get super duper intentional about how we engage in the life we want in this present moment, right? Do I want to use this present moment thinking about the future and solving all the maybes? Do I want to spend this present moment focusing on the past that I've no longer got control of? Or can I be open and flexible and curious about this present moment? Right? Now, often clients will actually tell me, they'll say, really honestly, they'll say, I'm going to be super honest with you, Kimberly. Being in the present is painful. I don't like it. I don't like the present. It makes me feel incredibly vulnerable. I basically say, straight up, absolutely, preach. I totally agree. Staying present requires a very large degree of willingness to feel this common emotion of vulnerability, right? But I actually did a podcast about this not long ago. This is what human existence is about. And when we tap into that vulnerability is when we're the most connected we'll ever be, right? We have been fooled ultimately by marketing companies and by product commercials trying to sell us this idea that getting rid of uncertainty and getting rid of vulnerability is a thing. If you buy this product and you get this app and you do this thing and you follow this 7-day program, then, you'll have a way better, easier life. And that's simply not true. Vulnerability is the tax on being alive. It's something we want to pay because we want to have the benefit. I pay taxes because I like nice roads and I like having electricity coming to my house. I like having a sense of organization in the world. I don't want this to be political, but what I'm saying here is I also want to pay the tax on being human, which is to be vulnerable and present in this moment, because that's where all the joy lives. That's where it's living. And if your relationship with joy isn't that stable, you don't access joy a lot, it might be because you're not spending time where joy hangs out. Think of it like, if joy was a thing and it hang out at a certain town or a certain club, you would want to spend time there with that, right? And so this is where joy lives. Joy lives in the present, right? It rarely lives in the future. It rarely lives in the past. It definitely doesn't belong with comparison and guilt and putting yourself down and, trying to take certainty away. Joy does not live there. We know this for certain, right? So we want to get connected. We want to get vulnerable. There's beauty to that. And if you need more information on that, go read anything by Brené Brown. Brené Brown is the researcher that does a ton of work around vulnerability. And that's what this is about. It's willingness to be uncertain, to be in doubt, to have discomfort with anxiety, and to be uncertain and vulnerable, right? Okay. So I hope this touches a little on maybe a struggle you're having with your practice of being present and mindful. Right? I think going straight through the gates, first step, don't be hard on yourself, right? I often will say to clients, you will suck at this. You will. I do. There's no shame in that. We all have good days and bad days. Just meet yourself where you're at, right? And if you're able to just once today come back to the present, celebrate that. Celebrate it. Do a little dance. Have a little fun, maybe, put your hand on your heart, give yourself a big high five and say, you did it. You did it once. That's awesome. And if you do it twice, have another party, do another dance, give yourself another high five because you did it twice. And now you're going to roll at strengthening that muscle. And that's all it is, right? There is a science-based concept here. And this is where I want you to put your faith and your trust in. Our brains are neuroplastic. I know I've talked about this before on the podcast, but what that means is our brains can change. Our brains can change. It's amazing. It's this, the inner geek in me gets so excited. Our brains can change. And the more we exercise muscles that help us and strengthen our ability to tolerate all of the emotions, the stronger our brain gets in that area, right? I've had clients who say, yeah, Kimberly, but your brain changes and their brain changes, but I don't think my brain can change. I think I'm too far gone. And I will say, there is no way that is possible. Your brain, and I'm talking to all of you here, please do not place that expectation on yourself that you're the one brain in this human race that doesn't change. You're the one brain who's not going to change. That's not true, right? We have science to prove that before you learn this skill of facing your fear, if we scanned your brain, it would look a lot different physiologically than what your brain would look like after you've learned how to stare your fear in the face. We have science to back this. Cool, rad stuff. And you're not an exception, right? You're not an exception, right? So if you're feeling so bummed out about this and you don't believe a word anybody says, here's where I'd say, do an experiment. You've got nothing to lose but to try and believe in and have faith in the fact that there is a science-based treatment here, a science-based method that can show that we can strengthen a muscle in our brain and we can get better. Okay? All right. I hope that's helpful. I really, really do. I thought it was such a great question, and I think it's something that I myself have to keep sort of juggling or, working on. It's not something that comes natural to any human being. It's a practice. And so we shall practice it. Okay? All right. Thank you so much for your support. Again, love you all. You are brave, courageous, awesome, kind, compassionate human beings. And I am so grateful for you. I did mention on social media just the other day how grateful I am for you guys, because I see it, I know you see it. Social media and these platforms can be sometimes a really crappy place to exist. There can be some incredible experiences of meanness and judgment and cruelness, and I never see that with you guys. It blows me away. It's phenomenal how kind you are and compassionate and supportive you are of each other, and you cheer each other on and you share your experiences, and I just cannot believe that I have this amazing community of kind people, right? Just the other day, my son, he started pre-K, and we had to write on this piece of paper our wishes for him and our hopes for him as an adult when he grows up. And what immediately came to me is, I just want him to be kind. I don't need him to be rich, famous, smart, fast. I don't need any of that. If he is, that's great. But I really just want him to be a kind, compassionate human, as that's my goal for myself. And wow, here I have this community of exactly that. So thank you. I really want to make sure I highlight that because it's super rare and I'm so proud of it. Okay? All my love to you guys. It is a beautiful day to do hard things. Let that hard thing be to be in the present and to tolerate what comes after the but. Just let it roll. Let all of your fear tell you all the bad possible things. And your job is just to go, okay, maybe I'm going to come on back to the present. Because that but was a flag for me to know when I had to come back to the present. And there you have it. Okay? Hope that helps. And I'll talk to you next week. Please note that this podcast or any other resources from cbtschool.com should not replace professional mental health care. If you feel you would benefit, please reach out to a provider in your area. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for supporting cbtschool.com.